Okay, so good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public and press. Welcome to this meeting of the Neighbourhood Services Committee. This meeting is a remote meeting being live streamed on the website and recorded. I will now hand over to Denise Wimperney, Democratic Services team.
Thank you, Chair. We'll begin the meeting by way of roll call of all those in attendance remotely, and may I request members to confirm they have a paper copy of the agenda and can both hear and see councillors in the meeting. I'll now begin the roll call. Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher, we have apologies with Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher as substitute. Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher, can you confirm that you're in attendance, please?
Yes, in attendance. I have all the papers also.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Howson?
I'm in attendance and I have all of the papers.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Yes, I'm in attendance and I believe I have all the papers.
Thank you. Councillor Little?
I'm here and I have all the papers.
Councillor Prince?
I'm here, thank you, and I have the papers.
And Councillor Tennant?
Present, and I have all the paperwork.
We also have Councillor Tony Richardson in attendance. Can I just ask if there are any other councillors joining the meeting I have not called?
Councillor Smith.
Right, thank you, Lisa. That now concludes the roll call, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. We'll move on to item 1. Well, we have the apologies for absence. Are there any other apologies for absence received? No. Okay. Item 2, to receive any declarations of interest by members. No. 3 minutes of the to receive the minutes and decision record of the meeting held on the 16th of October 2020. Do members have any comment on those? Okay. Number 4, there's no items. Number 5, key decisions. 5.1, public spaces protection orders, PSPOs. I will hand over to Sylvia Pigney.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to seek the views of the committee in relation to potential adoption of additional public spaces protection orders in Hartlepool. Public space protection orders give councils additional powers to deal with antisocial behaviour. Councils can use PSPOs to prohibit specific activities and or require certain things to be done in defined locations in order to stop or prevent antisocial behaviour. The breach of PSPO is a criminal offence, but can be dealt with through a fixed penalty notice with a maximum fine of £100. Councils may also introduce PSPOs where there is likely to be a persistent antisocial behaviour in a particular location or area. PSPOs have a maximum duration of 3 years, but can be reduced for a further 3 years indefinitely. PSPOs are not intended to be used to tackle specific individuals or properties, but rather identified antisocial behaviour problems in known locations. PSPOs are able to limit or prohibit what the public may or may not do in a specific area. Local authorities must therefore have a careful balance of the rights of the citizens to enjoy open spaces against the need to protect them from antisocial behaviour. There are certain conditions that need to be met before a PSPO can be introduced. And these are listed in 3.9 of the report, and our activities on or in a public place within the authority's area have had a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality, or it is likely that the activities will be carried out in a public place within the area and that they will have such an effect. The second condition of the effect or likely effect of activities needs to be either persistent or continuing nature, or such to make the activities unreasonable and justifies the restrictions imposed by the notice. In order for PSPOs the local authority must be satisfied and be able to demonstrate that the above conditions have been met. Fixed penalty notices for PSBOs are not automatic, and the person must firstly be warned and have the opportunity to correct their behaviour. PSBOs do not create an automatic offence punishable by a fixed penalty or prosecution. Therefore, it is a failure to comply with the request to stop the activity or to do what is required by the order by an authorised officer that leads to the offence being committed. In Hartlepool, we have a number of bylaws relating to antisocial behaviour or other unwanted activities. These are attached as an appendices to the report. It is possible for us to have bylaws and to have public space protection orders in place to control antisocial behaviour. PSPOs can be enforced by means of a fixed penalty notice, and they can provide a more reasonable and practical enforcement option than the bylaws. PSPOs can prohibit an activity already covered by the bylaws. In relation to alcohol, PSPOs can be introduced to control the consumption of alcohol in public places, whilst in theory they could also be used to control the possession of alcohol in public places. They would need to be carefully drafted so as to not criminalise reasonable behaviour, such as somebody carrying home alcohol from a local shop. The council would need to demonstrate with evidence how the act of being in possession of alcohol was likely in itself to be antisocial. Interestingly, the Act specifically provides a lesser criminal penalty for consumption of alcohol in breach of a PSPO. The committee will be familiar with the problems in relation to begging in the town centre. PSPOs can be used to prohibit begging or similar activities, but are only a financial penalty. And it is unlikely that they will act as a deterrent for begging, and we would argue that they would have a deterrent for beggars who would argue that they would have little or disposable income. The use of PSPOs in other local authority areas has been very mixed. Other options to tackling begging have previously been introduced into Hartlepool and have had a significant effect. And work is continuing to gather evidence to take those matters to court. Timing and seasonal variations. It is possible that a PSPO may only be put in place for certain times of the year when it's relevant, as opposed to a blanket ban. A public space protection order can be enforced by the police and by civil enforcement officers. And whilst the police are available 24 hours a day, our civil enforcement operate only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. 7 days a week, and therefore would not routinely be able to enforce PSPOs outside of this time. Any extension or variation to the work of the civil enforcement officers would impact on service delivery elsewhere. As such, without additional investment in the CSCO team, any PSPOs that relate to antisocial behaviour after 6 o'clock at night would generally fall to the police to enforce. Limited enforcement resources inevitably mean limited enforcement. Therefore, the selection of which and how many PSPOs is introduced must include a consideration of how they will be enforced. It's necessary that we carry out consultation for the introduction of any PSPOs, and that consultation would include the police and crime punishers, and whichever community representatives we think are appropriate. Different PSPOs can carry different penalties, and they would be could be clarified at a later stage. It's proposed that consultation be undertaken in relation to the adoption of PSPOs for the following matters. In relation to parks, a parks PSPO, which would cover parks and other identified public spaces, which would prohibit riding on skateboards, scooters and bicycles where they cause annoyance or nuisance or damage, camping and motorhomes, fishing in certain locations, and unauthorised use of motor vehicles in certain locations. In relation to alcohol, it's proposed that drinking alcohol in public PSPO would be considered in relation to the Seaton Carew Promenade area and identified parks and other local locations. In relation to begging, for the reasons that we've already detailed in the report, it's not proposed that a PSPO in relation to begging is considered. The adoption of new PSPOs will create additional enforcement pressures. However, it's proposed that these new burdens be incorporated into existing roles and responsibilities of the civil enforcement team, and therefore there will be no additional financial burdens. In relation to consultation, if approved by the committee, a comprehensive consultation exercise will be undertaken to meet the statutory requirements, which will require the police and crime commissioner and other relevant bodies to be considered. The recommendation is that the committee approves the begging and consultation exercise. The committee approves the beginning of a consultation exercise in relation to PSPOs as previously listed in relation to parks, and PSPOs in relation to drinking and alcohol in public spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. First of all, thank you for the fullness of the report, which really sets out quite clearly the Council's position on PSPOs. For interested members, I'll just check the order that I received hands up. I believe that Marjorie, you were first, and then we'll come to Amy Prince and Lisa Smith.
I did well there to get in first, didn't I? Right, the question I want to ask, I don't have any difficulty with the report. I just want some clarification as to why other areas are not being included. On the where you say A, Seaton Carew Promenade, including grassed areas, why is the headlands beach areas not being included in that? And on the identified parks and open spaces, we used to have a non-alcohol, I don't know whether it's still enforceable, around sort of war memorials, and I don't see that here in the report. So are they covered in another place, or do they need to be included? Because there is obviously difficulty, and we do have more than one war memorial in Hartlepool. Thank you.
Thank you. The headland area is not included because we have no evidence to support problems in that area. And the same aspects goes in relation to the war memorials. We've got no evidence of problems in those areas, and therefore they've not been included. The areas that have been included have been specifically because we've had complaints and evidence of problems in those areas, and hence that's why we're looking at the PSPOs.
Right, can I come back on that, Chair, because I just want to challenge that a little bit.
Yes, that's fine.
Right. Observations. I mean, I accept that potentially now and over the last maybe 6 months or so, there's been less difficulty because there's been less people around. But there has always been issues around war memorials right across Hartlepool. So that includes the headland, Seaton Carew, the cemetery at Stranton, and the main war memorial, which is opposite the Civic Centre. Now, you know, skateboarding, people hanging around there, sitting on the steps and drinking has happened quite frequently up until the most recent months. So I don't understand why we're saying there's no evidence. And the beach areas along at the headland, again, are we going to have to wait then until a child is either cut by glass being left in the sand, or that there is a serious issue? We're aware that there are families that use those areas, and those families deserve to be protected just as much as anybody visiting Seaton.
I can only say that we need to have the evidence to support, and if there are complaints in relation to those areas, then they can be included in. Obviously, this is part of a consultation so that they can be included, and people can say that they would like it in those areas, but we would need the supporting evidence to be able to then take that forward. And we would have to look at our complaints specifically that we've received in relation to problems in those areas.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, I mean, I think that's quite right. I think the we should be encouraging people to report if they find that there has been a major issue there. And obviously, as Sylvia has pointed out, we are going through a consultation on this, so there will be opportunity there for people to raise those points. But thank you very much for your introduction, for your points, Marjorie. Can I now move on to Councillor Prince?
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of questions, sorry. So our enforcement team works 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. Have we ever thought about deviating those hours, or has that been tried? Because apologies, I'm obviously still pretty new. And then my other question is around camping in parks. What about homeless people? Has this been thought about? I know that the housing team do go out and check on homeless people.
In relation to the hours that the teams work a rota. So we have at the moment 4 days on, 4 days off rota for the staff. If we have specific problems, they can work outside those hours to tackle the specific problems. But obviously that means that they're not necessarily available during their core hours. So that's when the bulk of the problems that they are dealing with are normally found. But if we've got specific problems, we do work outside the core hours. I'm not aware that we've looked further than that in relation to the hours that the teams actually work. In relation to the camping, no, not specifically. We've not looked at the suggestions that have come through on the park side have come through that the team that are responsible for parks have been involved in this, and it's areas that they are putting forward and obviously want to deter people from going and camping in the parks areas. In relation to homeless, I know that the homeless team do obviously go out and see people and obviously try to assist them into providing appropriate accommodation for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that we have one more committee member coming in, and then I'll come to Lisa Smith, if that's okay with you, Lisa. Thank you. So, Councillor Christopher Akers-Boucher.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Sylvia mentioned that there's some support and evidence background, but there's nothing in the background papers say about support and evidence. So can I ask that support and evidence to identify which elements we are going to propose consultation on is circulated? Because I would like to see that evidence, because I've reported complaints myself to do with drinking around Rift House Recreation Ground on a number of occasions, yet that's not included. But overall, I actually think that the timing of this report is really poor. We're dealing with a pandemic. We've got people who are going out who have really poor mental health. They are isolated. They can't go into pubs, clubs, various things. And I'm a bit alarmed, really, when you talk about, riding skateboards, scooters and bicycles through a park, because basically that's what children do. And children, even on the way to school, may cut through a park. And I think we're just setting ourselves up for a huge fall with regards to public opinion. I think, the timing is all wrong. At the minute, I spend such a lot of time trying to defend the council with regards to resources, and we can't even, police the things that we already have in place around litter and dog fowl, and I've lost count of the amount of times that we've been in council where we've asked for the numbers of fixed penalty notices have been issued with regards to, yes, about traffic, and also we've asked around litter and dog fowl, and we can't, and we just want to put even more burden on. Over the last week, I've been dealing with, we've been trying to recruit people into the local authority, albeit I'm not happy with the way they've been recruited, but that's another story. But I think the timing of it is completely wrong, and to actually turn around and say to isolate just Seaton Promenade, where a family couldn't go down, and have a drink, and I just think we turn into some sort of like nanny state where we try and to pick and choose where we police what's happening in Hartlepool, and we can't. I'd rather see a greater focus and resource focused on dealing with what the people in Hartlepool want, which is around litter and dog fouling. And all we're doing is creating more and more work for a team that can't even issue substantially notices around litter and dog fouling. So, the main question, is can we see the support and evidence before we make a decision?
Thank you, Councillor Christopher Expercher. Before I bring Sylvia in, I just want to remind councillors that at the previous Neighbourhood Services Committee, it was proposed that a consideration for any additional PSPOs was to be considered in this committee, and we received a particular one on Seaton Promenade. So that is what we're discussing today, and that's what's been put forward in the papers. I understand your points, Christopher, and you're well within your rights to make your points. And can I quickly hand over to Sylvia?
Chair, can I just come back first of all, because what I've asked for is, in order to make a decision, members should be given the right to see the evidence first.
Sylvia? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, yes, we can arrange to mission to assess on the area at Seaton Crew.
Thank you, Sylvia. Now we've got Councillor Lisa Smith.
Tony's got his hand up.
Sorry.
Oh, is Tony Richardson not part of the Neighbourhood Committee? Sorry, I thought it was Tony Hanson. Sorry, guys.
No.
I just want to put my reasons forward behind the public protection order in Seaton, especially the parks and the proms. Sue and I deal with a number of complaints on a weekly basis in relation to the amount of alcohol that is consumed and the antisocial behaviour that is associated with it on the promenade and on the parks. We've moved most of our bars now to takeaway pints, and the antisocial behaviour on the seafront has actually doubled. We have people urinating in the streets and parks and people's gardens. We get telephone calls and pictures sent of men with their tails out in people's gardens having a wee because there is no public toilets close to bars, or the bars open to have their toilets available for them. So if you say that it doesn't actually affect the people in Seaton, it does actually affect a lot of people in Seaton and their mental health and their well-being. The waste that's left behind on the beaches and the proms is an absolute eyesight. We haven't got the man. Power something new, we just it, and the antisocial behaviour will drop in Seaton. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for that, should I say, rather passionate argument there. Can I've got an interest from Tony Richardson. Tony?
Cheers, Chair. Yeah, no, what it is, a lot of the schools, kids go to school now on the bikes and they need to go through the parks, especially at Tunstall. You don't want them kids on that main road. And the same with Rosemary Park. There's the same, all the school catchment areas there, so they use the parks to go through. So to me, to stop kids riding on skateboards and that in the park, it's beyond belief.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. I think that's a good point. I mean, that's the whole point of this, of the consultation, is to take those arguments into question and ask people what they think, and hopefully, you know, if there's strength of feeling on that, then that will come through in the consultation. Can you, if you've got nothing else to say, Tony, could you take your hand down on the thing? We've got Councillor Sue Little next.
I would just like to add what Lisa's just said there. In the summer, when we were allowed to meet in groups of 6, I was getting phone calls from a lot of residents where they didn't dare have the grandchildren over because people were exposing themselves to urinate. This has caused a lot of upset in mental health, and we do need this, and hopefully this consultation might bring other areas into consideration as well. So I just urge all residents to fill in the questionnaires when they get sent out and released and sent out.
Thank you, Sue. We have Councillor Howson.
Thanks, Chair. Just to make the point that I think it is important that we're not intruding on children's recreation or ability to travel to school, and I think it's important that kids do have the opportunity to cycle to school, and it fits with a health and wellbeing agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howson. Tony Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm on that particular point, if members draw members' attention to the comment, it actually says rides, skateboards, scooters, bicycles where it causes annoyance, nuisance or damage. It's not proposing to necessarily stop the use of those within the parks. It's preventing from causing damage, annoyance and nuisance to the other users of those facilities. So hopefully that should allay the fears of members. Just to add to what's previously been said before, this is an opportunity for members and for the consultation to be undertaken to allow members of the public to respond to the mentioned at the start of this, actually like to see other areas added. That's their opportunity to bring those forward. As Sylvia mentioned, it's about the evidence behind it, but this is an opportunity for everybody to put suggestions forward as well, which we can then consider. The reason, as Councillor Tennant alluded to earlier, this is a request of the July committee that we bring this back. If these PSPOs are to be in place before next summer, then there was need to get this out and get the consultation commenced before the Christmas time to enable us to hit that deadline. Just thought it was important for members to be aware of that.
Thank you very much, Tony. I think I haven't got any more hands up, so we'll move quickly on to the recommendations. So I think it might make sense to have it all as one vote. So is there any dissent? I mean, I'd just like to point out that everyone's screen seems to be turning on and off for me, so I can't always see everybody. So if there's any dissent, raise your hand. If there isn't, then we'll just the recommendation will be adopted. Okay, doesn't seem to be any dissent. Thank you very much, councillors. We'll run quickly now to 6.1, and before we start 6.1, if there are any councillors wanting to raise any specific queries on the exempt items, please indicate that now. Then we'll have to move that to the end of the agenda. So, yes, Councillor Prince.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said to put your hand up if you wanted to ask questions on the sort of pink stuff.
Yes. Do you have any specific questions on the pink papers?
Yes, but am I allowed to say them now? No.
No.
They wait,
no.
right? Yeah. That's what I thought. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's fine. We'll move 6.1 to the after 7.2, where we'll have to go into closed session. So thank you very much. So we'll have to move on to 6.2 on the fly tipping debate. I'll hand over to Sylvia Pinkney.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to inform members of the nature and scale of fly tipping so that they can which was to consider the introduction of a free annual bulky waste scheme for each ward. Fly tipping is the illegal deposit of any waste onto land that does not have a licence to accept it. It is a criminal offence for which the offender may receive either a fixed penalty notice, prosecution, or there are other sanctions that can be made. Action can be taken either by the Environment Agency for large-scale fly tipping or the local authority. Fly tipping takes place on private land, where fly tipping takes place on private land, the landowner is responsible for arranging the removal, and any costs incurred on that would be with the owner of the land. Fly tipping is carried out by individuals and businesses, some of whom may have been paid to remove the rubbish as part of a waste collection service, and then they go on just to dump it and not to take it to an appropriate site. We all have a duty of care to ensure that our waste is disposed of correctly, and households and businesses need to ensure that anybody removing their waste has the appropriate licence to do so. Otherwise, we may take action against them for any fly-tipped waste that is found. That is classed as their duty of care and is mentioned on a number of occasions within the report. The number of reported instances of fly tipping are given in Table 3.17 to the report. It's estimated that the cost of fly tipping last year to the authority was £230. Fly tipping takes place in a number of locations. In rural areas, back lanes and lay-bys, on industrial land, within the town in back alleys and on urban grassland, and on allotment sites. The examples of that fly tipping are shown in the appendices to the report. If rubbish is reported on private land to us, then we will contact the landowner and removal. If we receive a report of fly tipping on council land, we visit the site to determine if there's any evidence within the rubbish that we can link to the person that has the rubbish has come from. If there is no evidence there, that the rubbish is automatically removed. If there is evidence is present, the evidence is collected and the rubbish is then removed as soon as possible. Any evidence obtained will be used to start an investigation with the aim of gathering sufficient evidence to take enforcement action. This will be either in the way of a fixed penalty notice or a prosecution. CCTV is also used to identify fly tippers, and we have a number of static and rapid deployment cameras in use. Civil enforcement officers carry out enforcement of fly tipping in addition to their other duties, and as we've previously spoke about now of earlier report, they work a rota system 7 days a week between 8 AM and 6 PM. At this stage, there are 7 ongoing criminal investigations in relation to fly tipping that team are carrying out. It's also possible for the team to seize vehicles, and earlier was seized, and more recently a trailer following links with fly tipping. The number of fixed penalty notices issued in relation to this are detailed in 3.61 of the report. Council run a number of services, obviously, in relation to the collection of waste, and we've got our regular household waste collection service, and in addition there, that team carry out cleansing within back streets. One comment in relation to that is that many residents may see this as a service that they take advantage of, as opposed to being a necessity because of rubbish that's actually been dumped in those areas. We have the Household Waste Recycling Centre, which opens 5 days a week, Wednesday to Sunday, from 9 till 4:50 PM, and visits there are on an appointment basis. Most waste can be deposited there free of charge. We have a bulky waste service, which will take up to 3 items for £20, and that's reduced to £10 for households that are on low incomes. And we have a premium waste service available to both households and businesses, where any number of items can be collected on a regular basis with an agreed fee. This service, unfortunately, is not running at this time due to COVID restrictions. We currently have joint working is being carried out between the cleansing and civil enforcement teams. Work has commenced in looking at how to stop fly tipping in certain sites, and this has included looking at permanently removing access to some sites that are being regularly used for fly tipping, as temporary restrictions on these sites have failed to stop the problem. Additional signage and publicity will be carried out in relation to encouraging people to keep alley gates closed, but there is no offence there in leaving a gate open. The publicity, there's a publicity campaign that we intend to undertake, and details of that are given in 4.24 of the report. We continue to do CCTV and our powers under Section 46 of the Environmental Protection Act, and work in partnership with other agencies to resolve the problems. In relation to free skips collection, the introduction of a one free skip collection per ward would cost £7,000 based on cost recovery of direct costs only. Additional new skips would also need to be purchased at a cost of £4,000, and there is also an element that there is no current budget applied. There is currently no budget identified for these purposes. Consideration also needs to be given to where the skips would be located, who would use them, how quickly would they be filled up, and what materials would be placed in them, and the additional increased risk of arson. There would also be an impact in relation to current income streams for bulky waste and premium waste services. And there will undoubtedly be an abuse of the use of these skips by irresponsible traders. In the days before bonfire night, we carry out work in partnerships with other agencies, including the fire brigade, to remove bonfires and other material from open sites across all residential estates, which in effect is a free collection service. In 4.37 of the report, we pose the questions as to why people are fly tipping, it is proposed that we set up a working group and that we involve other partners from other agencies, including groups that are currently collecting waste by going around and litter picking, and to consider how the problem could be tackled. It is not proposed to implement the free skips at this time, based on the complexities of introducing such a scheme, and that a budget does not exist. However, it is proposed that a further report on the work undertaken is brought back to this committee in 12 months' time. The recommendations, therefore, are that members note the content of the report and the request by full council for this committee to consider the introduction of an annual ward bulky waste scheme, and it is recommended not to implement the scheme proposed based on the complexities detailed in the report, and the currently no available budget exists. However, it is proposed that a further works be undertaken on this proposal whilst exploring alternative options, and present an updated report back to members in 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Before I bring in councillors on this particular item, I've been informed, and I'm sure some of you will have recognised and noticed me getting up and down the chair and talking to officers. That's because I was informed that Councillor Christopher Spelcher, the computer had crashed in the middle of the recommendations of the previous item on 5.1 on the PSPOs. I believe, Christopher, you wanted to signify your dissent to those recommendations. Am I right in that?
Yeah, just to record that, like, had I been able to, I would have voted, like, against the recommendations, and I just wanted that my vote recorded, if that can be done, please.
Okay, noted. That is noted. I mean, I think that's fair. I think we just move quickly back to the item that we're on now, which is on the fly tipping update. So I believe the first person who wanted to speak on that was Councillor Amy Prince.
Sorry, Chair. I think I was probably last to put my hands up.
Were you? I do. Well, that's very, very honest of you, Amy. Very honest of you. So, well, the next one I can see there is Sue Little. So I do apologise, Sue.
Thank you. I've got a few questions actually. I think we need to put do more publications on low-income families that they can have 3 items moved for £10. I don't see that anywhere. So I think that needs to be in big blackboard letters, even if we do ward newsletters, because I must report God knows how many fly tippings a week. We must have the cleanest beds in the country in Hartlepool, because I always see at least 3 mattresses a week being dumped in side streets or in open green spaces and industrial estates. I was a victim to hiring somebody to remove some rubbish for me last year, and I paid £40 and they dumped it. Brilliant, councillor getting things, but it proved, because I had a receipt, that I didn't get prosecuted for it. But I think we should have, like, in a taxi cab, we have a plate, or in the corner of the window, we have a license, that instead of having to go and ask them for all the paperwork to see if they've got the license to take the rubbish away and take it to the skip, if they had like something in the window on the van that's taking the rubbish away, if we could have something like that, so residents we can publicise the licence plate to say that this vehicle is being okayed by HBC. I don't know how that will work, and if people could do like copy them or but I just think that might be an idea to go down. And the free skips idea, I can't agree to the free skips idea. I just think I know a few people have done them, especially in the villages. It just caused more antisocial behaviour, especially if people put paint in there. Where I know people have thrown paint over vehicles and stuff, and I just think it's just more pressures on the fire brigade and more antisocial behaviour is going to occur from having like skips, and how long are the skips going to be there for? Because basically it could be filled within 30 minutes, but it might not get picked up for a week. So I can't see. I think we need to say that the three items for a £10, if you're on a low income, that is the best move forward, not giving residents free skips. I just think it's just going to cause too many issues around wards at the time when they have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. I mean, I think that the point you make is very salient. I think you're right that the £10 offer is reasonable, and we know that it gives us an indication of where the waste is coming from as well, and it cleanly got rid of. And your point about the free skip potentially being used up within 40 minutes and left there for months on end, it doesn't exactly solve the problem of fly tipping, does it? So I think you make a good point there. Let's hand over to Sylvia with your original idea. I do like your idea about the licence sticker, but so bring Sylvia back in on that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that we can look at carrying out more publicity in relation to the items being picked up for £10 for low-income households. In relation to the displaying of a sticker in the vehicle, unfortunately, the permits are given by the Environment Agency, not by ourselves. So it would be something that we wouldn't be able to take forward because they're the ones that issue the permits, not the local authority.
Okay,
Can I
thank
come
you
back
very
on that,
much.
please,
I
John?
was about to ask if you want to come back.
Yes, please. I think the display of a license, even if they had to like pay £5 for this license for the costs of whatever it costs to make, because like even though like because it's happened to me, I think it can happen to anybody. Lots of people, especially if they're getting the bathroom fitted. I've seen loads of bathrooms being dumped on the A689, especially just after just before the pull-in, the parking bay there. And if whatever it costs us to make this sticker, we could charge the person that, because they're going to make that 10 times and more. So I think the sticker idea, we should really, really like consider it. That's my personal view. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, I think we'll take that in consideration. I do appreciate that. We do have Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher. Christopher?
I think Marjorie was before myself.
It doesn't appear on my screen that way. I do apologise, Marjorie.
Well, can I just say, maybe it doesn't appear on your screen because I took my hand down and put it back up 2 or 3 times, because I actually indicated a long time before anyone, while the debate was still on, with the officer presenting the case. But I'm getting used to it, right? The situation I want to raise has been covered partially by Sue. I don't actually see why we couldn't introduce. So if an organisation has the necessary licence, which has been said comes nationally, but they are registered in Hartlepool for their vehicle, then they would be in the same category to me as a taxi cab, and you could actually have like a metal plate attached back and front that would give the licence number publicly, which also means that if they then involve themselves in fly tipping, and we fortunately have camera evidence, which we do occasionally, then their licence number would be very clear, which is unlikely if it's actually a sticker that maybe is in the window of a front of a cab. But if it's attached to where the number plate is on the actual vehicle, the same as a taxi is. So I think that that's definitely worth exploring. Whilst we don't have a budget for any of this, we do have at the moment a cost of nearly £250,000 a year. So surely there is money there, and it's better to prevent rather than have to clean up. So I would suggest that that's where the money comes from. Now, on the skips issue, we used to have skips, and I'm absolutely opposed to reintroducing skips, because it isn't just paint that would be in there. We regularly had deposits of asbestos and other nasties, which then the council then had to fund to actually get that safely removed, not just removed. So it would just be a freebie for local jobbing builders to just chuck their rubble in there. So I don't actually support having the skips back at all. But if we're talking about a £7,000 cost to introduce free bulky waste once a year in each ward, then I would suggest that that's not one a month, because we will be moving up to 12 wards, obviously. That it shouldn't be one a month. We should be looking over the sort of, say, from April to October to have 2 a month, because that's the bulk time when people are making changes in their households. Now, as one of the wards where we used to pay for this out of our ward budgets, and I know that Christopher also paid for it in Foggy Fairs. Now, it was well received. Residents knew when it was going to happen. If they had smallish items, but a couple of them, they would hold on to them for a few months so that they could actually dispose of them during that period. It was well used, and the service actually received payment for that. Now, I think that, and I'd be surprised that you can bring it in at £7,000, Sylvia, because we were paying around about £1,500, £2,000 a year for bulky waste to be removed out of our ward budgets. So if you said it were £2,000 a ward, that's 24,000. It's not 7. So I think that either way, it's money well spent. The amount of money is growing, and we're having to find it. So it would be much better to move on to a footing where we know what it's going to cost, and we encourage people to use the services that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. I think we got Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
Thank you, Chair. It's picking up some of the points that Marjorie raised also, because when we had the bulky waste in the individual wards, we used to partner with the likes of 13, and they used to contribute also, and I don't see anything about there's been any inroads in trying to partner in order to assist us in introducing the bulky waste. But some of us were part of the Finance and Policy Committee yesterday, and out of the extra £9.35 million that the government gave us with regards to tackling COVID and what have you, there was actually within that report, there was over £100,000 that wasn't committed. So we actually had a surplus amount of money. So, like, you know, based on Marjorie's proposal in an investor save, bearing in mind how much it's costing us for fly tipping, surely, like, you know, we should be utilising some of that money that's a surplus. And what we should be doing as part of our budget process this year is building in to this year's budget consultation, bearing in mind we won't be considering the 21-22 budget until the 18th of January of Finance and Policy. What we should be doing is building in to our budget and a request, a referral from this committee to Finance and Policy that bulky waste, one per ward, is introduced, like, you know, per what Marjorie was suggesting, because I don't accept that the money's not there. Like, the money is there and it's sat there. We have a general fund, and we should be doing what we elected to do and providing a service that our residents want.
Thank you, Councillor. I think we can bring in Councillor Amy Prince.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of questions, and I have a point that might be worth sort of exploring. So 13 do flash your trash events. So I live in the Dyke House ward in the Jesmond ward, and it was obviously pre-COVID, but everything in this year is just condensed into one ball of, I don't know what day anything is. So I'm not quite sure when the last event was, but it was very successful. So they gave strict criteria that you had to have the stuff at the end of a certain street by 9 AM, but not the night before, etc., to try and alleviate sort of antisocial behaviour, arson, etc. And they took away quite a lot of waste. And for a good couple of weeks afterwards, there was less fly tipping in the area. Perhaps we could try and link up with 13 to see how much these kind of events cost them, and if we could coordinate areas that you guys feel are particular problem areas to see if they're able to provide that service in that area, because obviously they're a company, they make a profit, we don't. And then I've got a couple of questions. When was the last time that someone was prosecuted for fly tipping, and how many successful prosecutions have we had in the last year?
Thank you, Councillor. Bring in Sylvia.
The last prosecution we had was actually only last month in relation to fly tipping, and it was a successful prosecution with a total fine and costs, and it is detailed in the report, and I'm just trying to find the relevant part, of in excess of £2,000. So it was a large fine and costs that were awarded in relation to it. So that was the last one. That's the only prosecution we've had in the last 12 months. The others have been fixed penalties that have been issued.
Thank you, Sylvia. Christopher, you've got your hand up. You wanted to come back.
No, sorry, John, I just hadn't taken it down.
That's all right. We've got one for Tony Richardson. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the tipping down at Bain Road, I don't think it's working, where you're having to phone up and go to Bearbank Street. It's definitely not working. That's why we're getting a lot more fly tipping. Now, I've had a look at a few of the councils. Sunderland Council, 8 items, £17.50. And all the bulky items are thrown in the back of the bin truck, which has a shredder, the same as your tree shredders, and it shreds it straight up. Right. Now, the other one is you've got like items 3 for £20. Now, am I right in saying if you organised as a charity, so if you're a charity, are you still allowed to go down to Burn Road and tip free of charge? Is that right?
I believe so. No, no, I don't believe it is.
So charities can't tip in there, no?
Can you repeat your question, sorry?
Say, if you're registered as a charity, are you all right to take your waste into Burn Road? Or do you have to book in the same as everybody else, like if you've got a...
The best person to answer would be Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in answer to Councillor Richards' question, charities are allowed one free tip at the tip per month, and they're entitled to do that. With regards to the Household Waste Recycling Centre and its operation, you don't need to go to Burbank anymore. You can go direct to the site. It's by booked appointment only. It's been proved to be a huge success, and the feedback we've received from residents has been brilliant in terms of what they've seen as an improvement to that site as a result of the reduced traffic congestion, the improvements to the service itself, the fact that if you turn up, you know you're being able to get in and dump the items that you would take in there because it's all pre-arranged. So we feel that it's one of the benefits that's come from the changes that we've had to make because of the feedback we've received from the users of that site.
Thank you, Tony. Tony Richardson, did you want to come back?
Yeah. Well, 2 weeks ago I was up at Horden, and most people that use Norden is people from Hartlepool. There's no charge on. They don't have to book, and they just drive straight in.
Has any of that been reported?
I don't know, but I went up to see one of the lads up there, and I'm not kidding you when I'm saying about at least 10 people I knew at that time from Hartlepool in there.
Right. Okay. Sylvia.
I could come back.
Sorry,
Hanson. In terms of as I said, if you know, one of the benefits that we have within Hartlepool is the fact that by having a registered system, you've got to be a resident of Hartlepool to use the Household Waste Recycling Centre. If other people are leaving Hartlepool to use other authority facilities, then they're allowed to do that. That's for the other authorities to deal with from their side. But from our perspective, one of the changes we made again was around the recognition system to ensure that a resident of Hartlepool was using our facilities from waste created within their own homes. So that was an additional cost to the taxpayers of this area.
Yeah, so we have the recognition license plates, so we're able to identify residents or not using the Burn Road site. Councillor Richardson, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I think I'd like to come back to some of the points that some councillors have made. I think are reasonably good. You know, I like some of the points being made by Councillor Prince with regard to, as part of the recommendations, if you read 7.2, is to propose how it's proposed that further works be undertaken on this proposal. So we can look at things like the recommendations and some of the points that you've made, such as working with third party groups, potentially looking at the Burn Road, whether it's working, whether it's not. You know, there's lots of different things we can look at over the course of the next 12 months in order to make some kind of facility available to residents. But we do have to take into account the fact that as an authority, because of, you know, the difficult pandemic that we're going through, we are financially stretched, and there is a facility in place, you know, for residents to get rid of their bulky waste directly with the council in a safe and clean way. Which mainly it could be that, you know, we could increase the visibility of that service to residents of the town, as well as looking at ways in which we could possibly introduce some kind of scheme that suits, that sort of works with bulky waste. But at the moment, if you know, the report does point out a lot of the complexities involved with the recommendation made by Councillor Akers-Belcher at full council. So I would like to move to the recommendations, but before I do, I know that Christopher would like to come back in. Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. It was just on that point because the recommendation says not to have a look at it for another 12 months. And, like, you know, based on what Marjorie was saying and what I was saying, what we're saying is why can we not have a look at meeting the cost of bulky waste within the 21-22 budget and do a referral for that to at least to be a consideration by Finance and Policy on the 18th of January.
Thank you, Christopher. I'll certainly speak to officers about that. And Councillor James, you want to come in?
Yeah, well, if Christopher's making that recommendation as a proposal, I would second that, and let's have a vote on it, because I think it's important that we don't just ignore the need of residents to have access to a free bulky waste. As I said, we have experience in both the wards that Christopher represents and I represent of actually providing this through our ward member budgets. It was well received, it was not abused, and it made a lot of difference. It got a lot of that rubbish that would just have ended up in streets and on green areas. For an investor save issue, if we're already spending nearly £250,000 removing the stuff, better to spend another 10 or 20 even to actually have an attempt at doing it. So if we're going to wait for a year, I don't particularly object if we run a pilot during that year, which means there does need to be a budget set for this for next year so that we can actually trial it for a year and then make a decision.
Tony Hanson?
Yeah, I think as members have rightly said, this is a very complex and challenging situation, and it's not an easy one of which we can resolve overnight, hence the reason why the request was to look at it again in 12 months. What we'd like to do, and we already have established a working group, and we also would like to look at the best practice from other areas in terms of seeing what other authorities have done, and Councillor Prince made reference to partner agencies, and it'd be good to link up with them. As Councillor James mentioned at the start, yes, the costs of what we delivered for both Councillor Akers-Felch and Councillor James's wards were slightly different from what was proposed in the report, and therefore the cost associated with delivering what was suggested there would be much more than what is put in the report at the moment. Ideally, from our perspective, we would prefer to work on it, and possibly, as you said, you could look at a trial to see if it would work. My concern with placing skips within locations is how do you determine which area would get it, how it would be, how long it's left there, what materials will be done, those things that will be left around the side as an authority we then couldn't leave. What would then happen when other members or other residents of other areas weren't getting it within their location? And realistically, would a member of the public, if they ordered something in the August time, they're not going to wait till the following June to keep that item before placing it in a skip in that location. I just think there's so many complexities we need to consider, hence the reason why we would like to look at it in more detail. We accept the fact it's a challenging thing, and it's frustrating for members as it is for officers as well as residents, and we'd like to look at it more closely over the next 12 months and hopefully come back with some more positive outcomes at the end of that, accepting the fact that we need to look at it.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the most prudent to point it out, Tony, is that we do need to get it right. You know, the worst thing we could do is quickly push it out there and realise the problems that come with it, which could actually increase the costs to the council as time goes by. We need to get it right, and it is a worthwhile exercise over the course of the next 12 months, and it will give us a chance to build it into the council budget going forward, rather than rushing it into January, where a lot of work has been done by the council officers in getting a budget forward on things that we do know about, rather than things that we don't know about. So I think it'd be important now, probably prudent for councillors of this committee to quickly move to the recommendations, and if we have any dissent, please raise that now.
Chair, can I just say that I've actually moved that we have a look at something, and the question regarding the money has not been answered. I said it says in the report there is not a budget, yet many of us sat in Finance and Policy yesterday, and there was an uncommitted budget from the £9.35 million that was given to us by the government in additional grant this year. So the money is there, And all I was suggesting, which Marjorie seconded, was that we have it as a consideration as part of the budget for 21-22. I'm not asking for it for this financial year. Like, you know, we've ran bulky waste before in the town, like, you know, so we know how it operates. All we're saying is for it to be a consideration. If finance and policy choose to reject it in January, that's down to finance and policy. All I'm asking is that we do a referral for it to be at least considered.
Yes, yeah. My apologies, Christopher. Yes, so we'll go through 7.1, 7.2, and we'll go to your recommendation proposal, which is seconded by Councillor James separately. That way we'll have a clear understanding. Can you exactly give me the wording of your recommendation, so just for the records?
All I'm asking for is for neighbourhood services to refer the introduction of a pilot bulky waste scheme, one per ward, within the budget for 21-22.
Okay, so
Could you
that'll be the third
that wasn't finance and policy as well, Chris?
So who was that?
Councillor Cassidy.
I don't know who that was. Sorry.
Okay, so
I didn't catch that, Tom.
Could you just also add in that gets referred to Finance and Policy Committee as well, and I'd happily vote for that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all I'm asking for.
okay, right. So on recommendation 7.1, is there any dissent from councillors? Doesn't appear to be.
Excuse me, but I have had my hand up for about 10 minutes, and I've also put my hand up as dissent, John. You're just missing it completely.
Sorry, Marjorie, I thought you still had your hand up.
No, I haven't, and I've took it down and put it back up and flashed it at you, but it's just not. You're just not taking any notice. So
that's not true, Marjorie.
Right. Well, I wanted to make a comment on what Tony Hansen had said. I have not today heard any support from any member about reintroducing skips. So it's a bit of a red herring in my view. We're not talking about skips because they are absolutely a waste of money, because they are open to serious abuse. What we need is a bulky waste arrangement where people leave their rubbish outside at a designated spot, and it's picked up in an efficient way by the council on a ward-by-ward basis. So I'm sorry, but Tony, we're only talking about skips, and we've already dismissed those. I don't think anybody's spoken in favour of having skips reintroduced. So the cost of reintroducing skips would also be available, because the actual cost that Sylvia Pinckney gave us was something like 7,000 to actually do a bulky waste pickup and 4,000 to purchase some skips. So altogether, there's a budget of about 11,000. Is more than adequate, really, from what you're saying. So I think that out of the 233,000 we're already spending, it would be a risk worth taking that it didn't work, and that there should be a pilot in next year's budget.
Okay, it's got Tony Hansen.
Yeah, apologies, Councillor James. As I said, we've picked it up that it was the request for a skip, and that's what price has been provided. If we're to look at a bulky waste collection, then again we would have to look at how that would operate and the cost associated with that, and who would you determine as to the eligibility for somebody to have a free bulky waste collection against those who are willing and do pay to use the service, and obviously the income losses that could come with that. So it's something we would have to look at. But as Councillor Akers-Belch has rightly said, it's a referral from this committee. If they wish to look at that, then that is something which members of this committee can vote on and suggest. And
I've already seconded the motion from Christopher, so we need to vote on it.
Yes, we'll come to that, Marjorie. So we've got Marjorie. Are you keeping your hand up, or do you want to come back?
Well, I'm going to just leave it up now, John. Then you'll know it's there, won't you?
Councillor Christopher Akers-Belch.
Chair, I just think, like, you know, we can't vote on 7.2 until you've considered the motion that, like, you know, both myself and Marjorie and Tom spoke on.
Okay. Right. Fine. We'll take the vote on the referral. Can somebody please turn the sound off the computer, please? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback. Okay. Thanks for that. So we have the referral to finance and policy from the motion by Christopher Expelcher. Do we have any? I think we should take a roll call vote on that. So I'll hand over to Denise Rimpany.
Thank you, Chair. Right, could we just start with the recorded vote, please? In favour, Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher. If you say for, against or abstain, thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
For.
Councillor Howson.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Little.
For.
Councillor Prince.
For.
And Councillor Tennant.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you very much. Now we have to move on to the two recommendations that were put forward in the report. I think it might be worthwhile just taking the both together. Do we have any dissent? Christopher, you got your hand up. Is that dissent?
Chair, I just think, now that we've done the referral, how can we do 7.2? Surely, it's superseded, 7.2, we should just take 7.1.
Let me just double check that.
I'll second that motion, Chair.
Quite right. Yeah, sorry, I do apologise, Councillor. So just take 7.1. Any dissent? Nope. Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much, councillors. We'll move on to items of information 7.1, mainstream secondary home to school transport and passenger assistance. Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This paper for information only. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an overview of the existing passenger assistance arrangements and to outline the current behaviour protocols on board our mainstream transport. 3 sets out the background. This report has been brought before committee this morning following a hearing of Personnel Subcommittee. Members of that committee requested that officers explore behaviour incidents and consider if there is a need to provide passenger assistance on board mainstream transport. Home to school transport is governed by the Education Act 1996 and the Education and Inspection Act 2006. Travel is provided free of charge to eligible primary and secondary school children who are attending their nearest school, which is over the statutory walking distances. The statutory walking distances are 2 miles for children under the age of 8 and 3 miles for children over the age of 8. In Hartlepool, we use our discretionary power to modify these distances to bring it in line with these, provide consistency between primary school and secondary school ages. So our modified mileages are 2 miles for up to the age of 11 and 3 miles for 11 to 16. This report focuses on passenger assistance on our large buses only. At present, there are 572 children travelling to secondary school throughout the Hartlepool borough. Table 3.6 outlines that over the last 3 years there have been 84 behaviour incidences, and these include the removal of seatbelts, the throwing of items, verbal abuse, damage to vehicles, and physical attack of another student. Paragraph 3.7 outlines the robust procedures currently in place for a driver to deal with any incidences as they occur. If the standard protocol does not rectify a situation, the school is contacted. A member of the school attends the bus, removes the offending child from the bus itself. That child is then subject to a period of exclusion from the transport. Table 3.12 demonstrates the number of pupil journeys versus the number of incidences. As can be seen, the total number of incidences in comparison to the journeys made is very low. The Personnel Subcommittee asked us to assess if there was a need to provide passenger assistance on board our buses. Based on the behaviour statistics identified within the report, there is currently no requirement to provide passenger assistance on all school transport. A combination of the existing established protocols, as well as a very good working relationship with our schools, has historically proven to be efficient at dealing with any issues. Routes provided under a private hire arrangement subject to the same protocols that we use on our statutory transport, and any changes to this protocol would have to be made in conjunction with those schools. Although regrettably, incidences have occurred in our buses, the statistics show that these are very low in comparison to the number of pupil journeys made. The repercussions of any incidences help prevent any recurring offences as well. The financial considerations, the passenger transport budget is under significant annual pressure. Provision of additional passenger transport assistance would need to be costed, and there is not the scope within the existing budget to accommodate these further appointments. There is no legal obligation to provide passenger assistance on mainstream buses. Moving on to staff considerations, the use of a passenger assistant on board all our mainstream travel would require the recruitment of 13 additional officers to act in this role. It is recommended that members note the request of Personnel Subcommittee to receive this report, and it is also recommended that the behaviour protocol procedures currently in place are noted as robust. The reasons for the recommendations is that the existing work arrangements ensure the Council complies with all its statutory duties and also help support the development of a child's independence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran. I have interest from Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report. I think it's quite clear in the report that we don't require assistance on the buses. So that would be a cost that we don't need to incur, and neither do the schools. So I would suggest that that be the outcome of this. The only question that I have actually got is on the 2 miles up to the age of 11 and then 3 miles to 11 to 16s. These are as the crow flies. They're straight lines drawn between a house and the school. Now, nobody walks in that direction, and I have asked already in another place this year that we give consideration to whether it should be by a safe walking route. That is the measure, and that we lobby government on that issue. So I would suggest that we actually add our voice to that call, and that Hartlepool Borough Council raises this issue, and to see whether we can actually get a safe walking route in rather than the crow flies mileage. But I also want to just say that the 3 miles for 11s to 16s, legally, children can remain in school until they are 18 unless they have a training opportunity or they have work. So the 11s to 16 actually needs to be 11 to 18. So I think we need to correct the paperwork that we have on this issue as well.
Thank you, Councillor James. Go back to Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor James. The distances are actually measured as statutory walking distances based on the safe walking route, so it's not as the crow flies. There was a motion at Council to write to the Secretary of State, and I believe that letter went in early November to ask them to review those distances. So that went to the Secretary of State for Education and the Secretary of State for Transport. And remind me what the last part of the question was, please, Marjorie.
The 11s to 16s.
Yeah, the statutory provision is for 11 to 16 only, so the report is correct.
That's not really what I'm saying, Kieran. The fact is that many students remain in their school until they are 18 now. So we maybe need to revisit whether there's a 16-year cut-off or whether it should be 18s, because some 18-year-olds would still be travelling as they have done all the time that they've been in secondary school.
Yeah, you're correct. They would still be travelling and continuing in the same establishment, but we as an authority don't have a statutory duty to provide that transport to them.
Right, and the other on the crows flies, as opposed to safe walking route, I think most members still believe it to be that it's the crows flies. So if we can circulate that information to members, that would be very helpful.
Not a problem. I can get that arranged for you.
Councillor Prince.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to echo what Marjorie said. When did we change from the crow flies to a safe walking distance?
Thank you, Councillor Prince. We never changed it. It's always been the statutory guidance. I think there was a misinterpretation of the guidance because it is based on the safest walking route.
Can I come back? Sorry, Chair. Just because my son's in secondary school and I'm in this band, I'm low income, and he walks over 3 miles to school, and we were refused a bus pass and was told it was in a straight line.
I'll take that back after the meeting if you want, Councillor Prince, because I can't comment on individual cases.
Thank you. We've got now Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that you haven't mentioned in the report, which I think is a valid one really, that we do have lots of operators have CCTV. So that if there has been incidents on vehicles, on school buses, that we can also refer back to the CCTV coverage of anything that's happened. So I think that should be mentioned in the report and people should be aware of it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue. So obviously it was an item for information, so members are happy to note the report. That's great. And of course, Amy, I'm sure you and Cleary need to have a conversation about your situation. That's fine. So we'll move on now quickly to 7.2, civil enforcement update. We'll hand over to Sylvia Pinckney.
Thank you, Chair. This report is for information and is to provide members an update of the civil enforcement provisions in Hartlepool as requested by this committee in your meeting held on the 13th of March 2020. The civil enforcement team is made up of 2 supervisors and 8 civil enforcement staff. They carry out a range of duties that are listed in 3.4 of your report. Since May, however, we have had a number of staffing issues in relation to this team, which has resulted in a team operating with only 6 enforcement officers and for 2 months with only 5 enforcement officers. In previous reports, obviously, we've gone through the details, so members are well aware of the hours and times that the team work. In Appendix A, there are details of the team's enforcement activities this year as compared against the previous year. However, COVID has had implications in relation to the work carried out by this team. There is in details of complaints received are recorded on the firm step system, and there is sometimes multiple reporting in relation to some complaints that are received. The committee may want to note that as we've previously mentioned, the number of fly tipping records are increased, but also the number of untaxed vehicles is increased, but they were problems in relation to ranging for their removal. Reports of dog fouling have fallen, and the number of parking penalties have also considerably fallen due to the lifting of charging in car parking for a good part of the year. We've received funding for a 13 group for 2 additional civil enforcement officers for 18 months period. Those interviews have now been carried out, and we're in the going through the appointments process in relation to those members of staff. The civil enforcement team have carried out lots of additional work during the COVID lockdown. In part because we had capacity because of the closure of certain car parks and obviously the much reduced use. They've assisted other bodies in relation to ensuring social distancing has been carried out and assisted the police on a number of other matters. The team have also stepped up its work in relation to dealing with beggars who are loitering around certain points in the town centre. Additionally, more recently, the team have been involved in a number of patrols in certain parks in relation to problems of antisocial behaviour. And also with the introduction of potentially additional PSPOs, this will create additional work for the team. The recommendation is the committee and note the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. I've got one expression of interest from Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
Thank you, Chair. And I know the report is just a note, but obviously, as an elected member, we receive lots of complaints around litter and dog fouling, and it has to be commented on that 5 fixed penalty notices issued with regards to dog fouling, given our complement of staff, regardless, is absolutely dire. And we have said so many times in so many meetings that there needs to be dedicated staff dealing with litter and dog fouling rather than the easy targets with regards to car park and tickets. But what I would say is, given the recent announcement from the Combined Authority about the funding that they're going to provide for free town centre car parking, surely now is the time for us to have a look at how we deploy our resources within the civil enforcement team so that we can give residents what they require, where we do have some dedicated staff will look at litter and dog fouling. And I would just like that, operationally to be at least a consideration once the introduction of free town centre car parking becomes live in January.
Thank you, Councillor Akers-Belcher. Let's go to Councillor James.
I'll second that motion, Chair.
Okay, so Tony Hanson.
Yeah, I think Councillor Akers-Belcher makes a very good point. I think it's important to remember, however, that the issuing of fixed penalty notices for both littering and dog fouling is extremely challenging. It's not as simple as catching someone once a member of the public tends to see an officer dressed in a uniform, they don't tend to do the offence that they're there because they know they can be caught and issued with the FPN. It requires a concerted effort from everyone. The intelligence has to come from the members of the public. It's simply not good enough to say that there's an issue of dog fouling or littering outside a particular premise for 24 hours a day. If residents are affected by this, then it's important that they help us by determining what time that offence has taken place and when it's likely to be occurring. And then from that point, we can officers in those key locations. As mentioned earlier in a previous report, the officers work 8 till 6, but will work outside those hours if the intelligence supports that. It's crucial that everybody buys into this, and it's also remembering that the litter, the dog fouling that is left, is not left by the authority. It's left by people who are acting inappropriately and not following what they should be doing and causing the antisocial behaviour issues that we see with the litter and the dog fouling. So, as I said, my plea to residents that and to members is that if people do approach you, ask them to give us the intelligence that enables us to allocate those limited resources in the most appropriate way.
Chair.
Yeah.
John. Chair, can I just come back? Notwithstanding the issues that have been raised by Tony, which I think are very laudable and quite correct in their sort of assumptions, I have seconded a motion moved by Christopher. So could we vote on that, please, Chair?
Chair, can I just add something? Because, I think one of the many things that I am approached with is the dog fouling around schools, around parks and open spaces. And all I'm asking for is, once we implement, the decision of the Combined Authority about free car parking, is for it to be considered to have some dedicated resource. I know it's difficult, and we could be looking at some additional publicity to run alongside it, and for that just to be had a look at once we implement the free car parking from the Combined Authority. I'm not saying it can be done, just that for it to be looked at.
Thank you, Councillor Akers-Belcher. Tony, you've got your hand up again. Yes, Tony Hanson.
Yeah, and just to support Councillor Akers-Belcher, the 2 enforcement officers that we've been able to recruit through the funding from 13 enables them to focus solely on environmental issues. So that will help us to address some of the concerns that Councillor Akers-Belcher has raised, that Councillor James has supported as a motion. So there will be more of an emphasis from the teams to be able to look at those environmental issues, but it does step back to what I said before, where the intelligence has to be correct to enable those officers to target them in the correct way. So,
thank you, Tony. And yeah, I think the intelligence argument is a compelling one, and it's one that we as councillors need to ask members of the public to make their complaints heard by the authority, so that we can direct our resources more effectively. Because you will note in the report that we are limited in terms of manpower and of the enforcement side of things. So I understand your point, Councillor Akers-Belcher, about the free parking that might be introduced in January with support from the TVCA, but that's for a limited period of time. It's not all day free parking. So, that we have to take that into consideration as well in terms of the parking enforcement rules, as well as the dog fouling enforcement. So it's just something to consider. But we'll come back to the motion proposed in a minute, because I have interest from Councillor Sue Little.
Thank you, Chair. I hope it is relevant, but I believe it's not an easy fix getting enforcement officers. I believe there's a lot of training involved, which members of the public might not realise, that the amount of training involved in getting enforcement officers. So these 2 new enforcement officers that are coming with partnership with the 13 group, how long will it take them to be, after they've been appointed, how long will it take for their training to be complete, so they can go out and find people? And one of my biggest pet hates about dog fouling is people picking it up and throwing it in a bush. So when you're doing a litter pick, I always tell residents who are helping me, watch out for the Christmas baubles, because you end up getting it covered in your hair. And it is absolutely, if you're not going to take it home and put it in a bin, just leave it, because it just absolutely, never mind. But I know it does take a while to train enforcement officers up.
Thank you, Sue. So I think that there's no more interest coming in the meeting. So the proposal by Councillor Akers-Belcher and seconded by Councillor James, we'll take a recorded vote on that. So can I hand over to Denise Wimpey of Democratic Services?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
For.
Councillor Cassidy.
For.
Councillor Howson.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Little.
For.
Councillor Prince.
For.
And Councillor Tennant.
For.
Thank you, Chair.
That's unanimous. So thank you very much, councillors. And can I safely assume that you note the report as well? You're happy with that? Thank you very much. So we need to go back to 6.1, which is
Chair,
vehicle and quick. Yeah.
Chair, do you want to take my any other business, because that's not in private session?
Any other business should be after everything that's
yeah,
on
but the point
first.
I'm trying to make is that most members of the public, if there are any watching this, once they've been switched off, they won't come back on.
Oh, we'll switch it back on.
Yeah, but I'm saying that they won't sort of be there. So I'm asking whether it would be appropriate to give the item of any other business before we go into private session.
Is it approved? Yeah, okay. It seems to be appropriate. I wasn't sure about the constitutional side of it, but yes, it seems appropriate. So yes, Marjorie, you have an item which you consider urgent, and you asked me prior to the meeting, and I've given you permission to express it. So please, can you put forward your proposal?
Right, I want to talk about the an assessment regime being brought in to cover hairdressers, barbers, and potentially gyms as well. Now, and I did say at the beginning, Chair, that I have been lobbied by a number of people that I know that are hairdressers and have establishments in Hartlepool. Now, this was just as we went into this lockdown that we're still in until tomorrow, and they're obviously very fearful for their jobs and employment. Now, what they were suggesting to me, and I thought it made sense, was that we already run a 5-star sort of hygiene arrangement for people who are working in catering. And what they were saying was, would there be an opportunity for some work to be done to bring in a similar regime with similar measures that would cover the necessities for hairdressing and barbers and potentially gyms. But hairdressers and barbers are the two that we're sort of asking in the main. And whether we could work with the industry in the town to look at how we could draw up such a regime and to introduce it. Now, I accept that the lockdown arrangements are normally made by government, but more and more they're moving to local decision making and local sort of arrangements can be put in place. Now, if we could bring in such a regime, it may be possible for us to actually lobby government so that other authorities could also utilise a similar scheme. But initially, it's to ask for a feasibility study to be carried out and for Hartlepool Borough Council to instigate a conversation with hairdressers and barbers in particular to see what kind of a regime could be brought in. And the ultimate intention, if we brought something in on a 1 to 5, would be that if we went into lockdown, we would be confident enough that 4 and 5s should be allowed to remain open, and that would be about lobbying government for that. If you were a 3, then you would be given a month to bring yourself up to a 4 and could then remain open. And 1s and 2s would be the ones that would be most at risk, and therefore they would be closed. So that is sort of the outline of it, but it's to ask for a feasibility study to be carried out urgently and to make those enquiries with the industry.
Thank you, Councillor James.
I'll second that.
Who was that, sorry?
It was me, John, so.
That's okay, Sue. No, that's fine. It's just...
Definitely for hairdressers, and I can't go grey.
Okay, that's fair enough. I just have a couple of questions, if I may, Marjorie. Have you got any documentary, people actually emailing you or any written requests from these people that you say have
no, it was done. It was done over a series of telephone calls. So to the weekend or so before we went into this month, and obviously there wasn't time to put anything in place for this situation. But who's to say when the next pandemic's going to come round the corner? So in some ways, it would be about setting up Hartlepool's hairdressing arrangements and barbers arrangements, just in case. But it would also, to be fair, bring in a lot of confidence from users of the industry to actually know that the establishment that they go to is a well-established and a secure place.
I understand.
So that's what we're looking for. So no, I don't have any evidence at the moment, Chair, other than phone calls. But that's why I want a feasibility study so that we can actually talk to people that are hairdressers and see what they would want to have in such an outcome.
Okay, Marjorie. I understand the arguments that you're making. It's just the first initial reaction for me, and don't take any of this the wrong way or anything like that. It's just, is there not a possibility that we have a town with a lot of barbers and a lot of hairdressers, and they've already had a lot of competition to get people using their facilities. I think there might be some difficulty in terms of winning over the barbers and the businesses in terms of the potential risks to their business if we're too tough with the
which is why I've said, Chair, that we need to have a conversation and that a feasibility study be carried out. But to be fair, and I mean Sue's shaking her head as well, I actually think it would be welcomed by those in the industry because, as I said, it was put forward to me by them themselves. So I think that to ask for a feasibility study would be helpful.
Okay, I mean that's fine. That's fair enough. It's just a concern of mine. That's all. But that's fine. Sue, you wanted to come in. Sorry, yes. Tony Hanson, you wanted to speak. Sorry, Sue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In terms of the proposal, I think Councillor James needs to bear in mind that the implications are on officers at the moment. The officers that would have to lead on that scheme are the ones that's dealing with the test and trace and the enforcement issues associated with all the businesses across Hartlepool. And that team are currently working 7 days a week and probably doing in excess of 10 hours every day in order to ensure that we can deliver that. I'm not quite sure that the capacity is there within that team to be able to look at something such as this at this present moment in time. I think it's also worth noting that whether or not you're a food business and making reference to the fact that the food registration scheme and the 5-star rating that we have for food businesses it doesn't matter whether you were a 1 or a 5, you had to close during the pandemic. It would not be possible, therefore, to then justify which business could open, because whilst there may be a 5, they may not necessarily be open in a safe COVID way. So you couldn't differentiate between, say, you're a 5 in a business and a 1, to then whether you could or could not open. It would simply be following the guidance that was placed before us by government, of which we would have to follow. Furthermore, the implementation of the rating scheme was hugely time-consuming, very complex. It's not something that could be done within a short period of time in order to support the businesses in this difficult position that we're in. Fortunately, those businesses you made reference to can all open from tomorrow, and that certainly helps the position we're in. So I'm not quite sure it would support us at this moment in time.
Chair, can I come back on that?
Yes, Marjorie. Right. I mean, before you do, I just wanted to say that largely that kind of the point I was going to try and make, because you have used the comparison between the food industry and the hairdresser in terms of this 1 to 5 system. It's difficult to apply that as well, in the sense that the food industry have had a blanket, either you open or you shut, whereas barbers and hairdressers have been treated slightly differently. And you wanted to introduce another layer that could potentially be more difficult for competition and business opportunity. That's just a concern, a deep concern of mine. But yes, Margie, if you wanted to come back.
Well, can I just say that it was about them being COVID secure, or it's not about are they a good hairdresser or not. It was about their COVID security. And I accept what Tony's saying. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But then a feasibility study never does. But at the initial stages, we're talking about maybe a questionnaire or something going out, which doesn't actually require qualified staff to carry out. But we could raise that issue and just see if they don't want it, that's great. The feasibility study would be that the industry doesn't want it. But I think that the industry possibly would actually require this and find that it would actually support them, because those in the food industry, Chair, as you've said, some of them are open because they're doing takeaway. But so there are mechanisms within for that to happen. So I'm just trying to make sure that we in Hartlepool actually set the ball higher and actually make sure that we are ready for the next pandemic that is coming around the corner. I mean, we've got bird flu already in North Yorkshire. So, who's to say what's coming?
Thank you, Marjorie. Have we got Councillor Sue Little?
I really, really think it's a brilliant idea. I think it'll also encourage a lot of people to go back to the hairdressers. I know a lot of people haven't been there since March because of the pandemic. If they had a rating, like the hairdressers where I go, takes my temperature, track and trace, he's cleaning the chairs and everywhere that anybody can touch, and the sinks and everything. And I think it'll a lot of businesses are going to need encouragement off others to go. So if they see a 5-star rating or a 4-star rating, it might encourage people to go back and use those businesses, because I think it's not just, I think the recovery from COVID, especially for a lot of businesses, is going to take a lot of time for people to get that encouragement to go back and use things. Just get my phone off Henry. He's a sod.
Thank you, Sue. I think that I can understand the concerns that some of you may have and the arguments being put forward. I just don't want to give off any impression that we don't believe that hairdressers and barbers across the town are not sticking to the rules and looking after their premises and protecting the public. We don't want to give off that impression, I hope.
Well, I personally, Chair, I think we'd be giving the opposite, because a lot of them have really entered into this, and they've spent quite a lot of money. They're allowing plenty of time for people on both sides so that they can clean down. So in a lot of ways, it wouldn't be about putting another nail in their coffin. It would actually be about saying they're alive and kicking, and please come in.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I just like from a confidence point of view, and I think it is a worthwhile act for us to do the feasibility study, because I remember previously when we were having a look at things like tattoo parlours and we brought in a rating scheme, and we were actually applauded nationally for bringing that scheme in, like, in Hartlepool. So I don't see it any different in, like, us doing something like this, because it is about taking the public with us and having confidence in the businesses for the industry that Marjorie refers to.
Thank you, Christopher. So I think we'll quickly, sorry, Tony Hanson, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just think, as I said, members need to know that there isn't the capacity there to bring forward this report at this moment in time. That just does not exist, and because of the nature of the work that's been undertaken. As I said, it's not that it may not be a good idea for the future and something we could look at, but we could not turn this round within the current climate we're in. The capacity simply is not there within the team to take that forward, because if we then sent a questionnaire out to the businesses and the response was they wish to see it, we could then not implement at this moment in time. So I appreciate the members' views that it's something they wish to look at. I would therefore urge that if that request was wanted, then it would be once this pandemic was over, we're in a position whereby there was some spare capacity within the teams to consider once more.
Well, can I say, House Chair? Right. Can I make a suggestion that if the committee accept the principle and request that a feasibility study be carried out as soon as practicable, and that we revisit this in 3 months' time, and then 3 months after that, it would just be a piece of paper on a report, wouldn't it? To say that at the moment there is no capacity, refer it on for another 3 months, but at least it would mean that it was active and that it was there waiting for when there is space to be able to do it.
If it's acceptable to committee, can I make an addendum to Marjorie's, if I could seek a seconder for this, that we look at the feasibility study after the pandemic, or in 6 months' time, whichever is the earlier, if that's okay. Can I have a seconder for that?
I'll accept that, Chair.
Thank you, Marjorie. We've got Christopher Chair. Want to come in?
Sorry, Chair, I just put my hand up by accident.
That's okay, no worries. Well, I think it looks like nobody else wants to come in. So is there any dissent to Marjorie's proposal and the addendum put in with 6 months or the end of the pandemic, whichever is the earlier as the extension to the proposal? Is there any dissent? No? Okay, that will be proposed and will be considered in time. Thank you very much, councillors. So we can now move back to 6.1. Know that if councillors want to raise any points that's not on the exempt items, we can keep the stream open. If we want to go straight to pink papers, the exempt items, we will have to close the stream if possible. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. We do have to consider the report first, of course, but I'm just making that point now. If anybody wants to raise their hand and it's pink papered, then we have to go into closed session. If it's not pink papered, please indicate that beforehand, and then we can continue. So I'll hand over now to Kieran to discuss the vehicle and equipment approvals 2021-22 and 23-24. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on equipment and vehicle purchases made during 1920, to provide members with an update on the vehicle replacement budget for the current financial year, to propose the vehicle and equipment programme for the next 3 years, taking us to 2024, and to refer the borrowing approval for the next programme to be included as part of the 21-22 medium-term financial strategy. Section 3 sets out the background of the report and identifies how we undertake a vehicle review on an annual basis, which is undertaken with service managers and team leaders. This review identifies the expected vehicle, heavy plant and equipment required over the next 3 years. The review is based on a number of factors, including maximising the life of the existing vehicles, the suitability to retrofit safety devices and the availability of parts, and the reliability of our existing fleet. An options appraisal previously undertaken identified that financing of vehicles through borrowing was the most cost-effective way of purchasing vehicles, because it allows us maximum flexibility to extend the life of our fleet. It allows all maintenance to be undertaken in-house through our garage down at Toss Farm. It avoids conditions on lease return, condition of vehicles, and it allows the council to optimise the financing, the borrowing as part of the Treasury management strategy. So the reviews are undertaken on an annual basis. Part of the review is to identify any increasing costs in maintenance and the life expired vehicles, but it also looks to foresee any potential changes to service requirements to allow these to be programmed in. This work, combined with the ongoing running costs of ageing vehicles, has resulted in a replacement vehicle programme for 21-22, 22-23 and a replacement preliminary programme for 23-24. It is important to note that not all items and vehicles listed on the pink papers will be purchased at this time, but this method gives us the maximum flexibility so the team can react should the need arise to purchase one of these vehicles. Moving on to the financial considerations on Section 5, the vehicles purchased in 1920 is outlined in Appendix A. There was a cost increase from the consented programme of 1920, but this was covered through the programme's inbuilt contingency. This increase was attributed to the sourcing of compliant passenger vehicle to comply with our school transport service. The vehicle replacement programme for the current financial year is provided in Appendix B. And this is an annual review that's put before Neighbourhoods Committee. If approved today, the recommendations progress to Finance and Policy for consideration on the borrowing. Details of the details of the 3-year programme taking us to 2024 are identified in Appendix C. Section 6 identifies the risk implications, and it is important that as a council we have a roadworthy fleet that's near faultless service availability. Many of the vehicles require specialist procurement routes, which can be lengthy, so in order to mitigate any risks in terms of delay, that procurement strategy will mirror that of the 3-year programme. Consultation has been undertaken with service managers to identify the service needs moving forward. So just moving on to the recommendations, Chair, it is recommended that committee note the updated position for the purchases of 1920 and the list set out for 2021 in Appendix B, A and B. That committee approves the replacement programme of vehicles set out in Appendix C, and that related borrowing approvals refer to Finance and Policy Committee. And the reasons for the recommendation is to allow the council to maintain a reliable fleet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kieran. I don't have any particular points to raise here, but we're going to have to open the questions first before we go to any exempt items, and then go to the decision, the recommendations, and then we go into closed session if there's any points to be raised on the exempt items. So Councillor Little.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to raise the same what I brought up last year. We seem to be changing our vehicles makes a lot, and obviously new makes is new equipment, is in tools, etc. Can we try and keep to the makes that we've got instead of going to a different make where we need a new whole specialised equipment? Might work out cheaper, but the equipment might make them more expensive. So I would like us to try and keep to the same make type of thing.
Stephen, yep.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, so each vehicle on there is an indicative line with an indicative budget. So what happens is, subject to approval today and FMP, the fleet managers will then go through each procurement exercise to find the best value, but that's not just the price of the purchase of the vehicle. It obviously builds in all that future maintenance, so that will all be considered going forward.
Thank you. Sue, did you want to come back in? No. Okay. So if there's no other questions on the report, we go to the recommendation.
Chair, can I?
Yes.
I thought that Amy had asked for this to go into private session, so she must have questions.
Yes. Okay. Right. Yes. Sorry, I was just getting confused with which way around we do this. So yes, We've got questions on the exempt items, so we will have to go into closed session. So the closed live stream, please. Yes, are members happy with going into closed session? Thank you, members. Okay. So welcome back to the members of the public press watching. We have that discussion. So now we move on to the recommendations to maintain the fleet that meets the needs of the council. Is there any dissent? Doesn't appear to be any dissent, so we'll take the recommendations as adopted. Thank you very much, councillors. That concludes the items to be discussed today. Thank you very much for very forthright opinions. Appreciate them. And
I'm sure you do, John.
So we have the date of the next meeting. I'm afraid that is to be confirmed. But you will be notified in due course. So thank you very much, councillors, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.